There are a lot of challenges with dealing with life in general, but particularly with money if it's not your thing. There are others who share your same story or share your same struggle. And so when you listen to podcasts, when you watch YouTube videos, you're taking in someone else's success. And you know how they say, fake it till you make it? Just ride on their high for a little while and you'll eventually get there too.
Are you ready? Are you sitting down? It's season 4 of the Shine On podcast. Absolutely terrific guests. My take on what's happening in the world of divorce. Are the stakes high? You better believe it. The unfiltered and real take on what divorce is like from the absolute best professionals. Life, love, marriage, divorce, relationships, finances. Topics that far too often many people shy away from. But not here on the Shine On podcast. Episode 80 of the Shine On podcast. I'm Evan Shine. We have an absolutely terrific show today and a phenomenal guest. Coming up on the Shine On podcast, featured guest segment, I'm joined by personal financial strategist for the FIIRM approach, Nikki Tucker. And Dave, I got to tell you, Nikki was brilliant, but you want to know who else is brilliant?
Who's that, Evan?
You are, my friend.
Oh, stop it. No, actually, go on.
And I'm going to go from you're being brilliant. You know what else is brilliant?
Yep.
I got to tell you, in Halloween costumes, right? This episode is airing post-Halloween. I love it. About all the haters on Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, people dressing up as couples, you name it, whether it's Taylor and Travis or any of your other favorite couples. I don't know what everybody's hating about. I loved it. Give me more Taylor Swift in the NFL. I love it. I just can't get enough. And oh, by the way, my Twitter is a huge Taylor Swift fan, but I gotta tell you, I don't know what everybody's complaining about.
Yeah, they're America's first couple, right? Come on, enjoy it. I actually, and I think it's a federal law to dislike Taylor and Travis. I don't tell anyone, Evan, but I recently traded Travis Kelce from my fantasy football team. I don't want the Swifties to know that I did that because I think that's a punishable offense.
Why you trading him? Because playing on the field sucks.
I know.
No, joking aside, it was not being what it's been in the past. And look, whether it's age, whether it's, distraction. I know people like to point the finger at Taylor Swift's direction, but I got to tell you, the Chiefs are having an incredible season. They're playing great. They're winning. And at the end of the day, football is a team sport. So whether it's Patrick Mahomes and people like to say he's not having the year he's accustomed to, and Travis Kelce's not having the year he's accustomed to, you know what? If you're a Chiefs fan, if you're a fan of Taylor and Travis, you know what? Enjoy the ride.
It's good times. It is good times.
But I'll give you something. I'm going to give you something that people should be, upset about.
Okay.
The fact that we changed the clocks, right? Other than my mother, who, it boggles my mind, and I tell her this all the time, who in their right mind, like when it gets dark at 4 o'clock? Who likes when it gets dark at 4 o'clock? It drives me nuts, right? My mom likes the dark. Again, we could probably psychoanalyze that until the cows come home, but who likes it, right? I don't want to hear you get an hour extra of sleep. Big deal. It's one day. It's miserable when it gets dark at 4 o'clock. And I got to tell you, people, right, whether it's depression, anxiety, there's all sorts of emotional connections to the clocks changing. I see it, right, in terms of what I do with people, on a daily basis, and the emotions and the stress. Nobody likes when it gets dark at 4.
I'm totally with you. I definitely suffer from that seasonal affection, whatever it's called, that disorder, because, yeah, it's one of those things where you come home from work and before you even leave the office, it's already dark and it feels like the day is over and you just want to sulk. I'm with you.
No, I got to tell you, and you know where there's no sulking? On the docket. You got a brilliant docket lined up show, as we always do. Let's fire it up.
Let's do it.
And now, let's see what's on the docket.
Well, first item on the docket is actually being talked about a lot in the divorce community. It has to do with divorce and TikTok. Let's fire up item number 1.
Item 1.
Comes to us from TechCrunch.com. Headline reads, TikTok accounts are becoming divorce fodder. And it gives an example. When Kat and Mike Stickler divorced, their biggest challenge was dividing a shared TikTok account with millions of followers that generated significant income. And they aren't alone, according to the Wall Street Journal. So tell us about this, Evan, because this is fascinating. And I think it was inevitable. There are a lot of families who do husband and wife TikTok videos, family TikTok videos. And then divorce comes along and, geez, we got to talk about this. What say you?
I got to tell you, I found this really interesting. I will say, right, that I thought the title of the article was a little bit misleading because, look, TikTok, people can poke fun and talk about how everybody likes to play the role of divorce attorney and use TikTok as a platform to give advice and all things like that. But once you read the article, it was fascinating. I was captivated because, look, at the end of the day, as a divorce attorney, you divide the assets, right? And you divide businesses, and you divide real estate, and you divide bank accounts, investment accounts, stock options, the marital residence, right? How things are going to be handled. It's one of those things that is now sort of cropping up, right? How are you going to divide a TikTok account, right? We've seen things like wine collections and sports card collections and other things and business ventures where both parties and both spouses have an interest in the account. So we're starting to see where one person, right, might be more tied to it. Again, there might be a buyout, there might be a payout. You might offset it against other assets. But it's a really fascinating article and a fascinating tape because I think we're seeing, right, a shift, trend towards entrepreneurship, towards TikTok, towards these social media platforms, how people use their social media presence to start businesses and create a living. And the other part of it is, look, if you take away the social media account from one of the spouses, what does it do from an impact standpoint related to somebody's income? So that's the other fallout from how you divide the TikTok account.
Yeah, and I got to figure this stuff will just keep on coming as people continue to use social media in all these ways. But do you and your wife share a TikTok account, Evan? Do you guys do something? No?
We do not. We do not.
Okay.
We definitely do not.
Not
but
that,
I gotta
not
tell
that
you,
it's ever it will become an issue for you, but maybe it's safe to have your own independent TikTok accounts. Then we won't be talking about it.
if there's one thing I've learned from what I do, you know what? Keep the TikTok account separate.
We move on.
Item 2.
Comes to us from Slate.com. This is an advice column by Michelle Herman, and the headline reads, "My wife just threatened to divorce me over my position on Halloween candy." Of course, as this podcast comes out, we're in November, but Halloween just happened a couple weeks ago. The writer of this letter says, "My wife and I have 2 kids. For the last couple of years, we've had a dispute surrounding Halloween candy that the kids collect trick-or-treating. The wife insisted that the kids be allowed to keep only 20 pieces each. The rest gets given away at her office or mine. I never agreed with this policy, but went along to keep the peace. And tensions are boiling over in this family, and the wife threatens to divorce the husband. Maybe I shouldn't laugh." Your thoughts, Evan?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Dave.
Yep.
Which you know I like to do.
Yep.
There's a lot of other issues here. It's not just the Halloween candy. Look, it's not just whether your kids got 10 pieces or 20 pieces, but you need a bigger issue, right? It's not how many pieces do you agree to give your kids. It's what you're giving out, right? I don't want to hear you're the house that everybody trades the candy from. You don't want to be that house. You don't want to be that house.
Right.
That people are swapping, right? Whoppers for Milky Ways or Whoppers for something good. And if you feel like I'm picking on the Whoppers, I'm picking on the Whoppers because I never liked Whoppers. They were terrible to give out. They would be the first thing I would trade with my brother. My brother was a big Whopper fan and never, again, it sort of baffles me how you could be a huge Whopper fan. But look, the bigger issue, and if you're going to get divorced over it, right, anything Halloween related, do it because you're the house, known as the house that, people trade the candy from, and you might want one candy, your spouse wants another candy. But, look, at the end of the day, I'm all for the kids enjoying however many pieces you want. Give it to your kids. You know what? They're going to, it's one day and move on. Let them enjoy.
Yeah, you want to be the house that people look forward to going to, that you always got something good, or at least, something straight down the middle that's acceptable, like Kit Kat, Milky Way, Three Musketeers, Reese's, the classics. There's always a family. We had a family that used to give away like pennies. What are you going to do with that? Good. You can't go for a fringe candy like Good and Plenty. Good and fruity, fine. Most people like it. Good and Plenty, You got to really like licorice for that. Dum Dum lollipops, nobody wants those. Come on.
At least there's got to be something in the middle. At least give a blow pop, a Tootsie Roll. There's got to be that treat surprise in the middle. But I'll tell you something further. The other thing, right, which is an issue in houses, you don't want to be the house that puts a bowler, right, that says, take one, please. I mean, how lazy could you be on Halloween? Take one, please. First kid that comes is taking the whole ball.
Exactly.
I mean, these are the things that I can see a legitimacy in terms of arguing. Again, if you're getting divorced over anything Halloween related, there's likely other problems that you should see me or you should see a therapist or a couples counselor. But again, let your kids enjoy the holiday. Happens once a year.
Yeah, get it right next year.
Item 3.
Item 3 comes to us from yahoo.com. Headline reads, Jessica Simpson's decade-long marriage reportedly headed for divorce. She was married for a second time with her current husband, Eric Johnson. If sources are to believe, she's experiencing trouble in her 10-year marriage. The cracks in her union allegedly appeared over a year ago and have grown even stronger. Always a little odd when we're getting these reports that are a little bit hearsay-ish. Who knows what's really going on, but that's the headline. That's the word, Jessica Simpson's marriage perhaps coming to an end. Your thoughts, Evan?
Yeah, Dave, look, my takeaway from this is, as you read in the article, it talks about how some of the signs were she wasn't wearing a wedding ring, right?
Right.
I've been wearing a wedding ring since I've been married. I mean, you would think my marriage is on the rocks every day, which, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I don't make much of this. I know she was married before. I think it's more about the fascination with the celebrity divorce and analyzing each and every detail. Is she wearing the ring? Is she not wearing the ring? Were the cracks there? How big were the cracks, right? I think as a society, we are obsessed and infatuated with the celebrity divorce. I'm not sure it's healthy. I know there's that belief, look, celebrities are just like the everyday folk. They get divorced too. But social media has really magnified, how we look at couples and in particular celebrities, trying to find any nugget, right, of information we can have in their personal lives.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And we like to follow celebrities just like we follow sports. We root for certain people. Let's face it, we like when some people fail if we could sort of have a distaste for them. But I do like to pause sometimes and think, what if it were you that they were writing about? Do you really think they'd get every detail right? Do you really think they would know everything going on behind closed doors between you and your spouse? So, yeah, I mean, it's for People magazine and things like that. Fine, but let's not go crazy here. We now move on to the segment where we hear from you, the listener, in Ask Evan.
Ask Evan.
Ask Evan.
Ask Evan.
Ask Evan this week. The letter is from Rachel in Saratoga, New York. She writes the following. Dear Evan, I've been separated from my husband for a while now, but we haven't officially filed for divorce. Are there any legal consequences or benefits for filing for divorce rather than remaining separated indefinitely? I think this comes up a lot, Evan. What say you to Rachel?
Rachel, great question, and absolutely love Saratoga. Nothing better than Saratoga in the summer. And I have to tell you, look, this issue does come up, and I think there's two things that come to mind. One, if you have any interest in getting remarried, you need to be officially divorced to do that. A legal separation is not going to cut it. And the second thing that comes to mind is health insurance, right? So many people will stay legally separated, sign a separation agreement, not go forward with the actual judgment of divorce for health insurance reasons. And the last reason I'll give you is if there's a tax benefit, a tax implication, that would be the third reason. Absent that, I think, look, some people choose for a whole variety of reasons to stay legally separated. The issue is that many people like finality, many people like closure, many people like to have that rubber stamp from a court signifying not only the end, but really more the beginning, allowing them to move on. So I would say, look, if it's important to you, any of the three things I mentioned, you want to speak to someone and officially get that signed judgment of divorce.
In New York, once you get divorced, are you no longer allowed to share health insurance? Is that right?
So you're eligible under federal law for COBRA, right?
Okay.
It's a question of who pays for it. But once the judgment of divorce is signed, COBRA kicks in. So the 3-year clock on COBRA begins once the judgment of divorce is signed and entered.
That's interesting because I'm in Massachusetts and I've been divorced 8 years and I am still on my wife's health insurance. Neither one of us has remarried and Massachusetts allows that. So for our listeners outside of New York, you got to talk to a local attorney to figure that one out. But it is interesting that some people think that you should rush to get a divorce to get everything finalized. Not always the case, but I agree with you that the finality is it's got to come, and so you got to do it at some point. Anyway, talk to a lawyer, right, Evan?
Yeah, no, talk to a lawyer. States are all different laws in different states, different jurisdictions. And actually, Dave, as we're talking, the other issue that comes to mind is sometimes people want to go back to using their maiden name. And again, this is language that would go into a judgment of divorce. So the more we talk about it, the more reason that, look, it may make sense to consult with someone in the particular state, particular jurisdiction, if this is an issue that you're dealing with.
That's another edition of Ask Evan. If you want to submit a question for Evan to answer on the podcast, email producer Dave at david@pod617.com.
It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Nikki Tucker to the Shine On podcast. Nikki is a certified divorce financial analyst and personal financial strategist. She is the founder and managing director for the FIIRM approach. Nikki works with women who are preparing for divorce and life after divorce and are ready to prepare their new financial life. Nikki, welcome to the podcast. We are thrilled to have you with us.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, that's great. And Nikki, we're going to start by talking about marriage and money and prenups. Still in 2024, one of the least sexy, least romantic words in the English language, yet I would argue it is one of the most important things you can discuss and enter into before marriage. Why is discussing a prenup still so challenging for many people?
Well, I'm glad we're starting here because it's one of my favorite places to start at. So I think the simple reason is because it's still seen as pretty taboo. There are those that view it as jinxing their marriage or relationship. And the other reason I think is because, quite honestly, most people don't even understand what a prenup is or what can be included in a prenup. And so there are a lot of misconceptions, for lack of a better phrase, about what prenups are and their intention.
So let's take it a little bit broader. Why is it so hard for couples to talk about money in a really open, transparent way?
Vulnerability and shame. It is very difficult for humans in general to be vulnerable, even when we're talking about someone they've been potentially physically intimate with. Getting financially intimate or financially naked is a completely different story. And so some of us have varied money stories where we are not proud of all the decisions that we've made. We've also been taught in some instances to not talk about money, to not share certain things because it's this ultra private secret thing that can't be discussed. And many of us are embarrassed about those mistakes or just things we haven't done with money or where we are versus where we think we should be. So there isn't one particular reason. It's a number of reasons, but it has a lot to do with our childhood experiences, our upbringing, and just how we individually view money.
I love the phrase you use, financially naked, financially intimate, which is true. I mean, people having that conversation are really discussing really intimate, important details that bring about all sorts of emotions and feelings. And in the context, though, by the way, you're also planning a wedding, you're getting married, which is supposed to be the happiest time of your life. So to that point, what tips do you have for how to approach the dreaded prenup conversation?
So first, I think before you even get into the prenup discussion, you just have to have a baseline set about understanding each other's money stories, philosophies, risk tolerance. So if you haven't had a discussion about if someone is investing in the stock market, if someone even has retirement accounts, if they have bank accounts, right? Like if you haven't covered these baseline things, you probably want to start there before you immediately jump into the prenup discussion. And then once you figure out some of the basics, talking about the prenup is really about protection for both of you. So for many adults, whether you are, especially in today's current times, whether you're marrying later on in life or you've been married before, most of us have accumulated some type of assets. So whether we're talking liquid or financial assets, meaning you just have money in the bank, or you own a home, particularly if you have children and the person that you're dating has some of those same things. So they have a job, they have money in the bank, they have retirement assets, and maybe they own a home as well. All of these things before they met you. I think approaching the topic about a prenup with, let's think about how we protect each other is one thing, because that's keeping like the end in mind. But also, let's think about how we can reduce money fights in our marriage. So part of a prenup includes analyzing and strategically outlaying, like documenting how you will approach your money. If you're going to have joint bank accounts, if you're going to have separate bank accounts, or a combination of the two. Who's going to be responsible for what expenses within your household, or big ticket, big purchases that you need to make. All of these things can be talked about during your prenup discussions. So once you lay it out, you have an opportunity, one, to say, okay, we're aligned here, or we're not aligned. And this is where we need to talk about it today before we end up fighting about it a year from now in the marriage.
Nikki, I got to tell you, that's music to my ears, and we're speaking the same language, because I tell people, look, a prenuptial agreement, if handled the right way, and if the conversations take place when they should, not a week before the wedding, but if you start having these conversations about prenups, about money, about life, about expectation, about careers, about jobs, about, like you said, investment accounts, stocks, what the plan, the future financial plan is, I can promise you, as you well know and articulated so beautifully, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache down the road. I mean, look, nobody sits in my office and says, when you're in a divorce attorney's office, look, my communication is great. Or what you hear is, I feel financially in the dark, or I didn't know he or she had all these other bank accounts, or, oh, we never talked about money. So I think by having those conversations and doing it early, like you said, you are not only setting your relationship and marriage up to be stronger, it's really a key to stay out of a divorce attorney's office.
Absolutely. It gives you a peace of mind. It really does. So not only protection, but peace of mind, because there's a lot of preparation that goes into the prenup process where, again, you have to be transparent. It's a requirement to make sure that you're outlaying everything you own and everything you owe. And so if you end up getting divorced, unfortunately, trust me, no one in the divorce space wants you to get a divorce, okay? However, if you end up getting a divorce, then you're going to have to do it anyway. There's a financial disclosure process, financial affidavit that you have to complete when you're getting a divorce. So why not just do the work on the front end and lay it all out there anyway?
No, I love that. That's you. And Nikki, let's go from the honeymoon phase, the happy times, the beginning of the marriage, to the end of the marriage, when people are separating and splitting up and getting divorced. What are the most common financial mistakes that you see women who you work with make during the divorce process?
There are usually two, and it depends on the person. But one is not being organized. So regardless of gender, but particularly for women, I think it's really important for you to have an understanding of everything that you're working with, what you're fighting for, all the information that you need to know, not only about your household, but even as an individual. There are things that you own, information about your own income and your expenses that you're going to have to disclose in the divorce process. It's going to cost you more money if you don't do this preparation work upfront. So if you don't gather documents, tax returns, W-2s, information about insurance policies, retirement accounts, all of those things, if you don't grab those documents ahead of time and put them all in a physical file, if you have paper copies, most of us have digital or electronic copies of things. So you put them in a file on your computer so that when you are asked for this information, because I promise you, you will be, then you have it ready to go. So that's one piece. The other thing is actually reaching out to attorneys too soon. And I think that attorneys are a critical part of the divorce process. So they are necessary and important, but they shouldn't always be the first phone call. And the reason I say that is because after the consultation, there's generally a retainer involved in order for them to do any more work for you or with you. And that bill adds up very quickly. Every email, every phone call, every touch point that you have with an attorney, unless you happen to get a flat fee package, which is it's possible, but rare. Every touch point costs you money. So if you're doing a lot of the preparation work up front, if you're organizing up front, then you will naturally save more money in the divorce process.
I mean, those are, again, two brilliant points. And I want to repeat the first point. It's something you said. I want to make sure everybody hears it. It's going to cost you more money if you don't do the work up front. That is absolutely true. And to your second point, get organized. Work with people. Surround yourself with the right professionals, the right people. Get yourself organized. Get yourself prepared. As I see it, it's going to save you time. It's going to save you headache. It's going to save you money in the divorce process. And people who are prepared and organized, look, divorce is stressful. You don't need the extra stress. I mean, really the goal of anyone you work with should be to try to minimize stress, make this transition, make this process, make this journey, make this path as straightforward as possible without the extra headaches on top of what someone is already going through.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Give us an example of the type of thing you would say to a friend or a client who is looking to rebuild their financial confidence after going through a divorce.
Information is your friend. This is what I tell clients. This is what I tell family. This is what I tell friends. Very often we want to hide from our money, especially when things are kind of ugly, right? So after a divorce, sometimes things are ugly and we just don't want to look at it and we'd rather throw the proverbial blanket over our heads. But you have to understand what you have, where you are financially, like what is your position in order to be confident in your decisions. And so this can be applied to almost anything in life. If you're thinking about going to a restaurant that you haven't been to before, and someone tells you, well, it's on this street and this street. So you have the cross streets for it, but you're not exactly sure where it's located. And you're trying to get there and you're like, okay, I think I'm going to make it on time. I think I know where it is. It gave me cross streets. I can't really picture it. Okay, whatever. I'll figure it out. Versus if you put in the GPS and it tells you step by step where to turn, your ETA, if you make a wrong turn, it's going to tell you you're making the wrong turn and reroute you. That's the difference in your confidence. So in the first situation, you're not very confident about where you're going, the end, like destination, where you'd like to get to, but you don't know exactly how you're going to get there or if you'll get there on time. And the second piece where I'm like, just use the GPS, exactly how you're going to get there. You're going to be very confident about, I'm getting to this dinner reservation or dinner date on time. So it's very similar with your money. You have to stay in front of it. You have to look at it. You have to understand the numbers. And if you don't, you engage someone, a financial expert, who can help you do that. So whether you're using technology to do it or human, there's someone that can aid.
I would imagine it's pretty easy for someone to get overwhelmed or discouraged and to lose the motivation and the confidence when it comes to rebuilding their financial lives post-divorce. Are there any unique strategies or creative ways you work with clients to help them stay motivated in an area that might be something they're not necessarily accustomed to being in?
Yeah. So one of the things that I focus on with clients is rewarding yourself. Very often we are just focused on doing the things, the tactical plans, taking the action steps. If you're trying to get your credit to a certain number and you hit it, then you move on. And like, okay, well, now I'm at 750 and now I want it to be 800. Like those are usually the conversations we're having. But take the time to reward yourself for hitting 750. Now, it could be whatever you want it to be. It depends on your personality. If you want to share it online or Instagram or Facebook or something and say, hey, I reached my goal, it's worthy of being celebrated. If you say, I'm going to treat myself to an amazing dessert, or again, I'm a foodie, so I bring everything towards food, but I'm going out to a very expensive dinner and I deserve it because I hit 750. So build in rewards when you're on your financial journey, because there's something that happens to us on a fundamental level where we appreciate that the high from being rewarded for accomplishing what we intended to do. So that's one of the things I focus on. The other thing is, because I think your point is very valid, Evan, about being overwhelmed. The other thing you can do is listen to other people's success stories. So there are a lot of challenges with dealing with life in general, but particularly with money if it's not your thing. there are others who share your same story or share your same struggle. And so when you listen to podcasts, when you watch YouTube videos, even when you read books, you're taking in someone else's success. And you know how they say, fake it till you make it? Just ride on their high for a little while and you'll eventually get there too.
And I have to ask you, I feel like, you know what, after you get through the Shine Up podcast, you should reward yourself, go out to a fantastic dinner. So if there was one type of food, cuisine, restaurant that you would go to, what would it be?
Wow, that's hard because I love so much. Ocean Prime is probably my favorite. It's
like
not in every city, but it's in most major cities.
We have an Ocean Prime, Nikki. If you're in Manhattan, my treat, and we'll get together. Ocean Prime. Producer Dave's a big Ocean Prime guy.
Really? See, Dave has good taste.
He does have good taste. And Nikki, I want to talk about your background and your own philosophies. Describe your personal philosophy or mantra.
It's about taking strategic risk for me. So I'm not necessarily risk averse, but I'm not the biggest risk taker. And that's because I'm a mom. I am the sole breadwinner in my family. And so my risk has to be measured. So the main way that I kind of live my life is strategically taking risk. That's anything from where I buy my house to clients I work with, to working in corporate, to speaking engagements, all of those things, like what's kind of the reward, benefit, payoff, all of that. That's how I think about everything in my life.
What's the biggest money misconception you've had to unlearn, either personally or professionally?
Time is money. So what I was taught a lot growing up is you do everything yourself. If you need to cook, clean, fix something, you figure everything out on your own because you don't need to pay someone else to do it. You can figure it out. And I may be smart, I may be intelligent, but I'm also strapped for time. And I have no interest in learning how to do everything myself anymore. And so I am unashamed. I call it bid a do within my business, but I am unashamed about outsourcing as much as I possibly can.
If you could wave the magic wand and change one thing, one aspect of how society views prenups, divorce, or finances in general, what would it be?
It would actually be more about marriage and divorce. So I think the barrier to entry to marriage is too low. I think
Tell me what you mean by that.
Individuals should be required, similar to a marriage counseling session, individuals should be required to go through financial conversations. I don't want to say financial counseling because that's not even enough, but having real financial conversations and financial disclosures doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a prenup, but more so that you can opt out of a prenup and just go along with whatever your state laws might be. But that's the one thing I would change. I think that the fact that all you need is breath and blood to get a marriage license is not enough.
What has been your proudest professional moment?
Helping clients in general, when it's not one thing in particular, but when I get emails from clients that are like, oh my God, my credit score is X, or I've saved 3 months and I've been struggling to even get a month worth of savings. Or remember you told me that I needed to get my estate plan together and update my estate documents. I finally did it. Someone actually reached out to me just yesterday and said, okay, I know you told me to freeze my credit because of all the breaches, but I don't remember how I did that. Can you remind me what you told me to do so I can unfreeze it, right? So the fact that they're listening to me is a beautiful thing, and that's the most rewarding.
You give advice and guidance to so many people, friends, family, clients that you work with. Is there a piece of advice someone gave you, family, a mentor, that you still think about, that still guides you in your personal or professional life?
Yeah, that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. We don't have to be perfect, and we're not going to be. And mistakes are lessons. And so that's how I view them. At the end of the day, generally when I do something wrong, or even when I'm talking to my son and he makes a mistake, what'd you get out of it? more often than not, you're not going to repeat the same thing, because if you do, then that means that you're something else, right? So I I think it's okay to make mistakes, and I'm comfortable with making mistakes.
And that's so important. And I want to bring on a guy who never makes mistakes, producer Dave, for a fun segment that we do on the Shine On podcast called They Said It.
They said it.
They said it.
They said it.
Yes, I have 3 quotes, all from famous women. They're all very famous women, as a matter of fact. And we're going to throw them out to Nikki and just get your opinion on it. Agree, disagree, or otherwise. First one comes to us from Oprah Winfrey. Oprah had the following to say: if you want to be successful, you have to get over your fear of failure. Financially, that fear keeps many people stuck in jobs they hate and lives they can't afford. Your thoughts on that, Nikki?
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Yes.
So this is kind of similar to what I said about making mistakes, but you can fail your way to success sometimes. And I think that it is totally fine to take the leap with a measured approach. So you hear about people taking the leap, and it's more like they jumped off the 54th floor, where maybe my approach would be, how about we jump off the 3rd floor and you can still survive? But I think that it's okay to be afraid to fail and get back up.
And Dave, we've talked about it on the podcast before, and Nikki, I want to get your thoughts. I mean, I see fear, and I see that really financial fear and financial concern that so many people have as why people stay in marriages and relationships much longer than they need to, because of that fear,
absolutely.
and because of that concern, and they feel financially trapped, and there is no light on the other side.
Yeah, and it's fear of, I can't afford to live on my own, or I can't afford to maintain the same lifestyle that we've had. And also sometimes the partner is misleading them. So I've literally had people come to me and say, well, he said he's not paying child support. Like, that's not a thing. That's not how that works, right? But they genuinely believe it. And so literally another, I hate to say this, but it's usually men that are telling women this, but another man said, well, you can't get my Social Security. And I'm like, you've been married for 20 years. That's not how this works.
Right? You're going to be living on the streets. You're going to have nothing.
Yeah.
You're going to be brought like
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where you come in, Nikki. Thank goodness. Quote number 2 comes to us from Gwyneth Paltrow. The actress had the following to say: you're ending a marriage, but you're still in a family. That's how it will be forever. It's a balance to find the right way to do that. And Evan, we know that she didn't actually coin the term conscious decoupling, because we had the guest on your show that coined it, but Gwyneth adopted it. Anyway, Nikki, your thoughts on this quote?
Yeah, I love Gwyneth. I think I appreciate the way that she models being co-parents. And I just strongly believe that just because you're no longer spouses doesn't mean that you can't be allies. So you don't necessarily have to be best friends anymore, but you don't have to be enemies. And if you both are focused on, especially if you have children, if you're focused on your family and making sure you're doing what's good for your children, then more than likely you'll be fine. But you got to set aside some ego.
Very true. My ex-wife may still hate my guts. I'm not sure. But when it comes to the kids, when it comes to the kids, we're almost always on the same page, and I'm proud of that and thankful, because Lord knows I deserve some abuse for my behavior. But that's another podcast altogether. Let's move on. Our third quote comes to us from Melinda Gates. She had the following to say: a woman with a voice is, by definition, a strong woman, but the search to find that voice can be remarkably difficult. Any thoughts on that, Nikki?
I completely agree with that too. So I'm 3 for 3 here.
I chose wisely, I guess. Yeah.
You did. I think this is spot on, particularly in marriages, and especially when it comes to money. So if you have someone who is not used to being involved in money decisions, and I call it being financially engaged versus just being financially literate. So maybe you understand the math, but you don't understand the decisions that are happening or the impact of the decisions. Then if you've never been a part of those conversations, it can be really tough to begin to voice your concerns or to begin to understand or find your place. And if you're going through a divorce, sometimes that same behavior shows up. So I think that it's spot on, whether we're talking about marriage or in work life or even with family. Sometimes it's hard for women to speak up. But once you find your voice, then you're on the right path. And I am known in my family and my friend circle to speak up. So when people call me and they're like, I need your opinion, I'm like, wait, do you want to hear the truth or do you just want me to make you feel better? Because if you want me to make you feel better, then you should probably call somebody else. But if you want to hear the truth, then I got you.
Well, very good. We thank you for playing along, Nikki. 3 for 3 and great quotes. And all three of us agree that Ocean Prime is delicious. And maybe someday we'll all gather there. Thanks. And back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
Dave, thank you. And Nikki, I got to tell you, this was an absolute blast, a lot of fun. Your guidance, you're helping so many women going through the divorce process, having that difficult prenup conversation, the money conversation, preparing women to live a happier, healthier financial life after divorce. Tell everybody how they can get in touch, reach out, find everything, and all the wonderful things that you have going on.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thanks for having me. It was a great conversation. The easiest way to find us is on the internet. So the FIIRM Approach, FIIRM actually has 2 I's. So thefirmapproach.com. We're also on Instagram and Facebook under the same handle. So FIIRM Approach is where you find us. We have ways that we can work together for free. We have blogs, all of that good stuff. And we also have digital programs for a fee.
Fantastic. Nikki, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Episode 80 of the Shine On Podcast. In the books, what an absolutely brilliant show. Nikki Tucker, she was great. Producer Dave, nailed it. Hit it out of the park.
Yeah, the Shine On train rolls along the tracks per usual. We were a little slow over this past summer. Great to be back on track. And the Shine On Podcast is my pride and joy, Evan, and I know it's yours too.
Dave, where else could you talk about Taylor Swift, your favorite Halloween candy? I hope there is if you should divorce your spouse if they leave out a bullshit. Take one, please, on Halloween night. You can listen to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast, wherever the platform is. And of course, Pod 617. I'm Evan Shine, and I'll talk to you again real soon.